Welcome to an Inspector Calls revision, AO2. Today we're looking at Sheila. When you're writing an AO2 response, it's best to think about it as zooming in. AO1 we zoom out and we look at the text as a whole, but for AO2 we're going to zoom in on a very specific piece of language. We're going to look at it closely and then we're going to analyse it, almost pulling it apart and looking at how it works. And then we're going to make some connections to the original question. The way we're going to do that is with SLEAL, and there's a sleeping seal there as you can see. Statement, label, evidence, explain, analyse, and then link. Let's look at that more closely. When you're writing about AO2, the first thing you do is you make a statement. This is something that answers the question, so make sure you're referring to the question you were asked originally to make sure that your AO2 response is part of a wider response. Then you're going to label the main technique that forms the quote. Now there might be lots of smaller techniques within the quote, but you're looking for just one main technique, one main method that the writer's using, and you're going to label that. Then you'll immediately go into the evidence where you're going to write the quote out. Now longer quotes might need to be broken into smaller parts, but here you'll basically have the evidence that supports the statement you made at the beginning. Finally, you'll explain that evidence. You'll explain in one sentence, probably using because, to explain what that quote means, just a general understanding of it to form the foundation of your response, to make sure that you're clear. After that foundation, you're then going to build your response by analysing the quote. Now to do this using a SLEAL in AO2, we're going to focus on the words and phrases from the quote, the key bits of information. We're going to rewrite that as evidence again in our response, and we're going to label it each time we include a new word or phrase. We're going to try to include a technique, labeling them as we go. Then we'll talk about what the phrase means, perhaps in a literal way, and then we're going to explain what it suggests, what the deeper meanings are. And the more of those we can do, the better. Each time you write something, does it have more than one meaning? Does it suggest multiple things? If you can do that, that's going to be really useful for a deeper analysis. Then you might want to think about what connections you can make. So you can make connections to context. How does this quote relate to why the writer was writing? And does this quote link perhaps to any other points in the book? You'll do these probably after you've analysed some of the bigger ideas in the quote. Then think about the writer. What's the writer trying to show us? What do they want us to think? What ideas were they trying to share with us when they were writing this quote? And then finally, a link where you're going to make a comment that links your response back to the question that was asked at the start. So you're reminding the examiner that you're always talking about the question and that this AO2 response is part of that. Our quote for Sheila is, "But these girls aren't cheap labour, they're people." Now this quote is said in Act 1 and it comes before Sheila is interrogated by the inspector and it's revealed that she was responsible for Eva Smith being fired. She obviously says this to challenge her father's ideas. The inspector actually is the one that says that these girls are cheap labour, but he's reflecting Mr. Burling's ideas, and when she says this, she's rejecting her father's ideas. So, like I've just said, she says this in response to the inspector's revelation to her that many young women are being exploited for their labour by people like her father. Now, Sheila's one of the younger generation, and that's important because anything we write about the quote needs to be a reflection of not just Sheila herself, but also of the changing attitudes of the younger generation that Priestley was trying to share. This moment represents her breaking from her inherited values, which we see a lot of at the start, and starting to form her own ideas. The conjunction that this opens with, but, is a sign that she disagrees with her father. It's immediately a challenge to those ideas. She sees these as human beings which are more than just useful for their labour. It is slightly ironic, of course, that her own actions also reduce Eva Smith to disposable. So she's not yet fully realised that she's complicit in this as well. This challenge foreshadows her change in beliefs later, and it also shows that she's able to challenge the way things currently are in society. This perhaps shows us that there's hope within the younger generation and that society could be better. Towards the end of the play, she becomes the inspector's proxy, a stand-in character when he leaves, and she becomes the one who challenges her family. And this is important because this scene represents, this quote represents the first time that she really challenges her family. Girls is a plural noun, so it makes it clear there's many such girls out there, not just Eva. Eva's the face of our story, the story that we're going to follow, but she represents the many, many other young women who are suffering. Sheila herself could also be considered a girl, and the word girl is used quite a lot in this play to represent younger women. So perhaps there's a sense that class and social rank are removed from this. Possibly it's more likely that it demonstrates the stripping of their identity as just girls, and the upper classes see them kind of as a resource to be used. It kind of dehumanizes them. Their people is a statement that stands on its own, and it suggests that it's true, something she truly believes in. She actually thinks it's wrong to treat them as just objects. Then we've got another pronoun with these girls. These girls puts Sheila on the same side as the girls. She said, these girls, I'm on their side. It's different from those girls, which suggests that they're somebody separate. She says these girls as if she's standing alongside them metaphorically. Cheap is an adjective here, and it makes it clear that the people that we're talking about, these girls, are economically vulnerable, they're poor, and they're easy to use because they need the money. So it gives Mr. Burling an opportunity to exploit them. The worth of these girls, the reason he employs lots of young women rather than anybody else, is because they don't cost much. Remember, Mr. Burling wants to keep labour costs down so he can exploit these girls. Cheap also suggests that the girls are of low quality. Because they're poor, they're working class, the bourgeoisie see them as having little worth other than their labour. It also suggests that they're easily replaced. They're a commodity, they're a resource, something to be used until it is no good anymore, until it is used up. The working class, the proletariat, particularly in 1912, had so little that the only thing they could really offer is their labour. They were the labour force. And that immediately reminds us of the capital versus labour agitations that Mr. Burling speaks of during his early speeches. So capital meaning business owners, the people that want to make money, versus labour, the workforce, and the agitations, the people who were upset that this relationship continued. Priestley is challenging the bourgeoisie. He's telling them that they only see the proletariat, the working class, in terms of what they can get out of them. He's telling them they don't see them as human beings. Now, labour is being used as a noun here. And again, it implies these girls are just defined by their work. That's it. They're dehumanized by richer people. Now, Sheila obviously disagrees with this. She wants to see them as people, not just a faceless group. And despite her own mistakes with Eva, she does show that she has the ability to empathize. And in fact, when her mistake with Eva is revealed to her, she has a huge amount of regret and guilt for what she did. A bit of context here. So Priestley obviously was a socialist, and this reveals his socialist beliefs. We're supposed to like Sheila. She's a character that we can see is willing to change. And when she realizes her father's selfishness and the actions of all greedy middle-class people and how they affect society, we sympathize with her. Their lack of rights feels unfair when we realize that they're human beings. Now, the suffragette movement, a movement that was designed to give women the vote, more rights in society, it literally gives women a voice, and they were very active at the time. And Sheila's defence of women here echoes those battles that have been active since 1903.